Hey, we are still in the business of helping or supporting Scrum Masters, Business Analysts, and project managers become better practitioners on the field and as well, prepare for their exams. And it appears that most of us tuning in, we've not actually subscribed, and it's a way of, supporting us, letting us know that what we've been sharing, they've been of good use to you. So we encourage you today to please subscribe, hit that subscribe button, like button, share, and comment. So today, we know we've been on requirement lifecycle management. We've looked at trace requirements, maintain requirements, prioritize requirements. So today we are going to look at assess requirements changes. So you've traced your requirements, you've maintained it to make sure there are no, faults or no issues. You prioritize them according to the value they are going to bring to you. Now you want to assess requirement changes. Maybe there are changes, while you are prioritizing, or while you are maintaining and stuff like that. So you want to really go into that and know how to, manage that. So, what's the purpose of assessing requirement changes? So, the purpose of assessing requirement changes is to evaluate the implications of proposed changes to requirements and designs. And remember, we are still in that stage of planning, getting things done, looking at stuff and all that. So you've not actually started, solutioning and all whatnot. So you are trying to look at the changes. You're trying to evaluate the implications of proposed changes to requirements and designs. Maybe your stakeholders, they've come forward with some ideas and stuff, and you want to look at, okay, how would this impact what we are doing, okay, in terms of the requirements, in terms of the designs. And these are proposed, remember. So descriptions are recommended. So description, the assess requirement change task is performed as new needs or possible solutions are identified. So as you're going on, your stakeholders are coming up with new needs or possible ways, to help what we are doing, or possible solutions, they are identified. So this is where you assess requirement changes, okay? These may or may not align to the change strategy and or solution scope. Yes, at times when you have new requirement, it may not align with your plan or your scope. So assessment must be performed to determine whether a proposed change will increase the value of the solution, or if so, what action should be taken. So we are assessing this new requirement to see that if this will bring or increase the value of what we are doing, and even if it's going to increase the value of what we're doing, we need to look at other things, so we don't just take it in. Okay, it has to go through the change management process. So business analysts assess the potential effect of the change to solution value, and whether proposed changes introduce conflicts with other requirements or increase the level of risk. For example, you are trying to introduce maybe payment. Okay, maybe the project is for you to, advertise your product, right? That was the scope, or the website you should bring build for your stakeholders. And all of a sudden, your stakeholders, they are coming forward to say, oh, we also want to, sell products on this platform. That means if you're selling product on the platform, that means you are going to be collecting people's information. You see the risk involved. It is a good idea because it will bring in more money, but if there is risk in collecting people's IDs, or maybe collecting their credit card or debit card on your system and storing it on your system. So this means you have risk. So you have to run to regulation to say, okay, or maybe when you're putting it through the change process, and when you're discussing with your sponsor, you are itemizing the risk involved, and also how this conflicts with your scope. Okay. So business analysts also ensure each proposed change can be traced back to a need. Okay, so this need of, advertising business or selling products on the same website, we just want to advertise business alone. Okay, let's look at what we have, the requirement, and see if there's any connection at all. Okay, when assessing changes, business analysts consider if each proposed change aligns with the overall strategy. Remember that you're not just building with the business strategy or the need and stuff. It has to align with the firm organizational, strategic points, or, yeah. So affects value delivered to the business or stakeholder group. So does this affect the value you are delivering? Impacts the time to deliver or the resources required to deliver the value. And so how does this impact the time? For example, bringing in this payment into a website that is meant to be for advertisement, it will increase your timeline. It will increase the fact that you need more resources. Okay, alters any risk, opportunities, or constraints associated with the overall initiative. The result of the assessment must support the decision making and change control approaches defined by the task, plan, business analysis, governance. Just like what I said, oh, we need to start collecting people's NIN, or start collecting people's SIN or whatever. Oh, you have to like sit down with legal, sit down with regulation, part of department to discuss this, to know the risk involved, to know even if it's possible to start, think, so that you don't have to think it too much, and you know how to get back to your stakeholders. Now, input, proposed change. So what you need here is the proposed change brought forward by your stakeholders. So proposed change can be identified at any time and impact any aspect of business analysis work or deliverables completed to date. So remember, see, we're not saying, oh, anything that has to do with change, when you have a scope or whatever, you should push it through the window or throw it out. No, you have to analyze it. You have to put it through the, process. Then you now come back to your stakeholders with a firm or a recommendation. Okay, so you don't want to, you don't want to be on the black book of your stakeholders. So you do due diligence so that they would even buy in. They would even understand why, okay, you are recommending this. And remember, they have the final say, even no matter what. Okay. There are many triggers for a proposed change, including business strategy changes. Okay. Now, for example, your business comes to you to say, okay, since this is going to be a kind of maybe advert only website, okay, we think it would be also nice to put maybe a form on the website whereby people can ask us questions. We can even maybe add a survey where people can give us feedback and all whatnot. Okay, so here the business strategy changes because they want to also learn more from market, learn more from people coming on that website. Okay, stakeholders, legal requirement, maybe things of change in terms of legal or regulatory changes, just like we mentioned. So requirements may need to be assessed to identify the impact of a proposed modification. Yes, you look at your requirement to see how this impact what we are the change, how it impacts our requirement. The designs may need to be assessed to identify the impact of a proposed modification. So looking at our diagram, we have the input as our requirement, designs, proposed change. We have our guidelines and tools as change strategy would guide you, domain knowledge, governance approach, legal regulatory information, requirements architecture, solution scope. Then you have your assess requirement changes. Then the output will be requirements change assessment. Requirements change assessment, you've done that. Then design change assessment as well. So what are the elements? Assessment formality. Business analysts will determine the formality of the assessment process based on the information available. Okay, so you determine the formality, how you want to go about it based on the information you have. The apparent, also based on the apparent importance of the change and the governance process. There are some changes that they are regulatory. So, yes, you put it through change process, but it has to be quick because if you don't go into, bringing in that change, the company may be fined. Many proposed changes may be withdrawn from consideration or declined before any formal approval is even required. A predictive approach may indicate a more formal assessment of the proposed changes. In predictive approaches, the impact of each change can be disruptive. The change can potentially generate a substantial reworking of tasks and activities completed in previous activities. So let's take this again. A predictive approach may indicate a more, when they say a predictive approach, well, like you are able to predict what should happen and stuff like that. Look at stuff without even, going through the process, and you are trying to, bring in changes. indicate a more formal assessment of proposed changes. In predictive approaches, the impact of each change can be disruptive. The change can potentially generate a substantial reworking of tasks and activities completed in previous activities. An adaptive, you remember what an adaptive is? You work or you show, like you look at what you've done, then you continue, it becomes iterative. An adaptive approach may require less formality in the assessment of proposed changes. While there may be reworking needed as a result of each change, adaptive approaches try to minimize the impact of changes by utilizing iterative and incremental implementation techniques. For example, you assess, you like, okay, we don't think this will work because we've tried to, do it and see how this has turned out. Or you say, oh, I think it will work. Okay, we take up the first one, we'll go into with the next change. So the idea of continuous evolution may reduce the need for formal impact assessment. So the second is impact assessment. Impact analysis, sorry, is performed to assess or evaluate the effect of a change. So you are doing an impact analysis. So how would this impact us? So you're looking at its risk, maybe money, regulation, and all whatnot. Traceability is a useful tool for performing impact analysis. When a requirement changes, its relationship to other requirements or solution components can be reviewed. Yes, when a requirement changes, it may impact others. Okay, so we are supposed to plug and play. So we're now plugging and we're now playing and we're now dancing. It would affect everything. So each related requirement or component may also require a change to support the new requirement. When considering changes or additions to existing requirements, business analysts assess the impact of the proposed change by considering benefit, the benefit that will be gained by accepting the change. Okay. Cost, the total cost to implement the change, including the cost to make the change, the cost of associated with work, and the opportunity cost, such as the number of other features that may need to be sacrificed or deferred if the change is approved. So remember, for example, if stakeholders bring in a change, maybe regulatory, and you guys need to be fast with it, that means maybe your developers, they would want to work over time. Also, you have other stakeholders that their work are pending, so you have to liaise with them. Okay, so also leaving this to do this, it would cost you because you're now going to be paying your developers more. So impact, the number of customers or business processes affected if the change is accepted. Schedule, the impact to the existing delivery commitment if the change is approved. Urgency, the level of importance, including the factors which drive necessity, such as regulator or safety issues. Impact resolution. Depending on the planned approach, various stakeholders, including the business analysts, may be authorized to approve, deny, or defer the proposed change. All impact and resolutions resulting from the change analysis are to be documented and communicated to all stakeholders. So you've done what you need to do and you're now communicating it to your stakeholders. So either to approve, deny, or defer. So how decisions and changes should be made and communicated across an initiative is determined by the tax plan business analysis governance. Remember, your governance tells you about approvals. We have a video on that and you can check that out. So guidelines and tools. And also, just like as a reminder, we are not being paid by IBA or PMI or even Scrum.org. We are just sharing our knowledge. And yes, hope you've enjoyed what we've been doing so far. And if not, if yes, kindly comment, share, and subscribe. So let's continue with the guidelines and tools. Okay. So change strategy, that is the first. Describes the purpose and direction for changes, establishes the context for the change, and identifies the critical components for change. Domain knowledge, you have to, this would guide you. Knowledge of and expertise in the business domain is needed to assess proposed requirement changes. Governance approach provides guidance regarding the change control and decision-making processes, as well as the roles of stakeholders within this process. Legal regulatory information describes legislative rules or regulations that must be followed. These may impact requirements and must be considered when making changes. Requirement architecture. Requirements may be related to each other. Therefore, the business analyst examines and analyzes the requirement relationship to determine which requirement will be impacted by a requested requirement change. Solution scope must be considered when assessing change to fully understand the impact of a proposed change. So, what are the techniques? You have your business case used to justify a proposed change. Yes, the business case tells us why are we doing this, what are the benefits and stuff. Business rule analysis used to assess changes to business policies and business rules and develop revised guidance. Decision analysis used to facilitate the change assessment process. Document analysis used to analyze any existing document that facilitates an understanding of the impact of the change. Estimation used to determine the size of the change. Financial analysis used to estimate the financial consequences of a proposed change. Interface analysis used to help business analysts identify interfaces that can be affected by the change. Interviews used to gain an understanding of the impact on the organization or its assets from a single or small group of stakeholders. Item tracking used to track any issues or conflicts discovered during the impact analysis. Risk analysis and management used to determine the level of risk associated with the change. Workshops used to gain an understanding of the impact or to resolve changes in a group setting. Who are your stakeholders? Your customer provides feedback concerning the impact the change will have on value. Domain subject matter expert has expertise in some aspects of the situation and can provide insight into how the change will impact the organization and value. End user uses the solution or is a component of the solution and can offer information about the impact of the change on the activities. Operational support provides information on both the ability to support the operation of the solution and their need to understand the nature of the change in the solution in order to be able to support it. Project manager reviews the requirement change assessment to identify if additional project work is required for a successful implementation of the solution. Regulator, changes are likely to be referenced by auditors to confirm compliance to standards. Sponsor, accountable for the solution scope and can provide insight to be utilized when assessing change. Tester, consulted for establishing impact of the proposed changes. Output, requirement change. So your output, the first is your requirement change assessment because you're assessing, this is the stage of assessment. So the recommendation to approve, modify or deny a proposed change to requirement. Designs change assessment, the recommendation to approve, modify or deny a proposed change to one or more design components. So the next one we're going to look at will be approve requirements. So see you then. Thank you.